Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Board of Finance. On Monday, June 12th, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:06 p.m. And the first item on the agenda, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. Do we need any amendments or
No.
so? Hoping someone will move it as presented. So moved. Thank you, Councilor McGee. Do we have a second? Second from Councilor Barlow. And any discussion of the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Are any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. You're hearing us okay, Councilor Jang, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. And there are just 4 of us tonight, just so everyone's clear. President Paul is away. So the next item is the public forum. Is there any member of the public who is here to speak to the Board of Finance? I'm not seeing anyone in the room. However, we do have former City Councilor Sharon Butcher has her hand raised. So go ahead, Sharon. You should be able to talk.
Yes, I'm your faithful follower. So
We appreciate it.
so what I'm going to speak to is, first of all, I'm going to listen to Catherine's presentation. And I know that there was a lot of information already in the packet, but about the budget. But what I'm going to say, don't own this, don't take it in a negative way, but it is a reality. I'm very concerned about, and it's a tightrope, let me just say, between compensating employees fairly and what the citizens of Burlington can afford. When we did a big overhaul of management positions, so I don't even know how many years ago, Mr. Mayor, we got a consultant who gave us a range, and then we had another process which applied what Burlington could afford. And I feel that the process that we've undergone right now is a variety of consultants who know their business and know the departments that they're giving guidance to and to us. But what I don't feel has happened is the affordability overlay. And I'm really concerned as employees get very good salaries and have very good benefit packages, that there are a lot of people in Burlington who don't have good salaries, and some don't even have benefit packages. And I'm feeling that the process is encouraging people or forcing people to make choices to live elsewhere. And so I say this in earnest. It's not easy to say because I know a number of those employees and they work hard and they're deserving of good salaries. But I do think there is an affordability factor that really needs to be looked at. And I also want to say that I don't know how this all plays into the retirement system, where we all already know was underfunded. We're doing much better because we changed a lot. Thanks to Bob Russin's leadership and that committee. But I feel that's all interrelated. And I don't know how much of this that I'm speaking about really drives the budget. But human resources in every department is most of the time the most costly factor. So I know it does drive the budget. So thank you for listening.
Great, thank you, Sharon. I don't believe there are any other members of the public wishing to speak to the Board of Finance. So I am going to close the public forum, and we will move to the consent agenda. We do have several items on the consent agenda. So hoping there is how the board like to proceed. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I would move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Jennings, Councilor McGee. Any discussion of the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda is adopted. So this brings us now to 4.1, which is the authorization. This is a section of the agenda for the approval recommendation of the City Council. The 4.1 is the authorization to apply to downtown sales tax credit reallocation program regarding the power plant project 176 South Lansky Avenue. Welcome, Samantha, and old friend Kirsten Merriman Shapiro is here. And we really have not talked much about this project with this board, I don't think, so maybe get us oriented and in general before we go to the
Yeah,
detail
well,
here.
I'm gonna let Kirsten talk to you about the project because she is here from Champlain Housing Trust and is deeply involved with the project. And I'm happy to talk about the agenda item, the sales tax reallocation. But if you want to just give an overview of the project, that would be great.
Sure. We're very excited. This is 176 South Winooski Avenue. It's the site of the current VFW post. And we have an option agreement with them to redevelop the site into 38 units of housing and 2 commercial spaces, one of which will provide a new home for the VFW going forward. And then hopefully the other one will be for the Community Justice Center, the city's Community Justice Center. It's a brownfield with a corrective action plan of over $1 million. So we'll be cleaning up a brownfield in the downtown, as well as creating these new units. 11 of these units will be for homeless folks who are exiting homelessness, and also 5 of those will have a preference for veterans. So we're very excited about this project and excited on working with the city on these improvements in the right of way as relates. So we think it will connect nicely with the Main Street Great Streets project. So
Great.
happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you for that. Certainly, I'm Cito and my office has been engaged in this project for some time. We're excited about it. I think it's likely that we will be back. I don't think we've taken any action yet around housing trust fund investments or other potentially ARPA investments, since we do have some ARPA money that we've kind of earmarked for housing, but that we've not committed yet. This is one of the projects that we're talking about doing that. But those are future conversations. Just, I guess, put that out there as like this is something we're pretty engaged in and looking to support. And sales tax reallocation is something that's fairly easy for the city to be supportive of. So maybe, and we're trying to do, I see this two of these tonight. So maybe you can. It's not. I don't remember us doing this anytime recently. So maybe just make sure all the board members are familiar with this.
Sure, and yeah, it's in the memo, but the downtown program sales tax reallocation program comes through ACCD from the state, and its money is available to development projects in designated downtowns. And basically it takes a portion of the anticipated sales tax from the development of that project and kind of gives it back to municipalities. And there's a formula that determines the full, how much each municipality can get. And it's kind of, if it doesn't go to Burlington, it'll go somewhere else. So it's money that's kind of sitting there ready for us to access. So the city applies in partnership with a developer who's doing the main project, and the funds go to basically public improvements. So in this case, it will go to new sidewalks, new trees, new lighting, and it's going to extend those improvements in the public right of way all the way up to connect with the Main Street Great Streets program, which is really exciting and allows the city to bring that resource to the public improvements, which benefits the city and the development, obviously.
Just on the east side of the street.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
Just in front of the project.
Okay, with that, floor is open for questions or motions. Council Barlow.
Yeah, just in terms of my education and how this program works. So there are certain properties that are identified as being eligible to receive the reallocation, and we have to add this property.
We're not adding the property, so any development in our designated downtown is eligible to apply for. So the approval from Board of Finance and City Council next week is just for us to be able to apply for the sales tax reallocation. I'm not familiar enough to know if like you always get it or curious.
I can tell you a little bit more about it. So it's a program the state has run for their downtowns, and it's based on the amount of sales tax certain eligible construction materials will generate. And it's for when you have a private development project, it will pay those sales taxes. And then this is asking the state to take their portion of the sales tax and reinvest it into the project, public infrastructure and other infrastructure that supports the development of the project. So sidewalks, curbs, it could be its utility connections, stormwater, things like that. Are the intention. And so it's a joint application between the developer and the city. And it's a little tricky because a small project would probably not be up the state. You have to take how much your sales tax is going to generate. So this is totally made up, just easy numbers, right? So let's say you had $6 million of sales tax or eligible activity items. You have to take the first million off because we're the largest city in the state. And so you would only be able to request the reallocation of sales tax on that $5 million. And that's 6% because it doesn't involve any local option taxes.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
And it's a once a year application. So there's really a short period of time. And one of the great things about this year in the application round is because all of the tax credits for downtowns throughout the state has been very well subscribed to. They've increased the upper limits. And so there's an opportunity here, not only for this project to apply, but also for CityPlace project. So it's a great year and hopefully we'll both be.
Yeah.
Both projects
So
will be
the
selected.
applications are due on the 30th, June 30th.
June 3rd.
So
3rd.
30th. We're in June 12th.
I'm sorry, July 3rd.
It's like
July
July
3rd.
3rd.
My bad.
My deadline, internal deadline is June 30th because I will not be submitting anything.
Fair enough.
I know.
Right.
Yes, so again, I think the memo that you have in front of you is for both these applications. Kirsten's here representing the CHT for the post apartments application. It's a very similar process for CityPlace, similar actually set of public infrastructure, just a much larger project.
The state wants to be sure that the municipality is on board with the application. And so it's that formal action taken by the Board of Finance and City Council that is one of the items required for the application.
Great. So thank you both. Any further questions or ready for motion?
I think I'm ready for a motion as indicated on PODAC.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Councilor.
Kristen. Yeah.
Give it a second. Second by Councilor McGee. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote and doing the motion was just for 4.1. So we'll just vote on that. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And can we have another, are we ready for another motion on 4.2, which is essentially the same issue, just with the CityPlace project, and that one there too. That's the 75 Cherry Street. Sorry, it's just that is this CHT building.
No.
No.
Howard Plant is a CHT building.
Right. It's-
So that's 4.1, 4.2 is Cherry Street,
Right, 75 Cherry Street, which
CityPlace.
is the whole property. Okay, great.
That's just their zoning permit. That's the address on their zoning permit application, which is what
Okay.
we need to use.
Great. So how the board like to proceed on that?
Have you pushing this? So I'm on civic clerk right now and I don't see a recommended motion, so.
It's in the resolution, I think.
There's a resolution. Yeah, it's under, separate. Usually it's in the, but there's two resolutions, or one for each.
Sure, is it sufficient to say it for civic clerk or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Right. I can make that motion. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much for your support
Great,
in this
thank you
exciting
both.
project and
Thank
forward to
you.
working with everyone.
All right, so next is 4.3, which is fire leadership pay scale, LPS. Welcome, Chief LaChance. And can you give us a quick summary? Just kick this off.
Sure. The reason to bring this to you tonight, we've been communicating this or working on this for about a year with the separation between the fire department leadership pay and union leadership pay increases. There ends up being a compression factor between base pay, EMT incentives, bonuses. It reduces the ability for me to promote out of the union because there's not enough separation between the rank they are at with their bonuses and things and the rank they're going to go to. So we, based on closely with the PUP plan with the police department, that's what we've kind of modeled this after the FLPS.
Just say a little bit more about that. Not everyone might know that for many years we've had this police unified pay scale.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
PUPS, which addressed this exact issue in the police department. Came out, Chief Sherling, I think, developed it. It's been in place for over a decade, around a decade. And it was a response to exactly this issue in the police department of there being a challenge getting anyone to step into leadership role, sergeant, lieutenant roles. So we're now facing the same issue in the fire department.
Yeah, and we're just trying to kind of solve this problem once and for all, set percent differences between the captain rank and the battalion chief rank and the battalion chief rank and the deputy chief rank, and have cost of living adjustments based on the same as the firefighters, so that as they go up, we go up, and it's a consistent raise, and you can understand you don't get that compression factor. So that's the history of it. I've started working on this about a year ago, and we've been through a few different plans, working together with the mayor's office and the chief financial officer. And this is the plan we brought you. It does show for comparison ranks in the police department, so you can see that they are comparable to I know the rank names are different, but they're comparable in job function. So it shows that we're not out of line with public safety, the other public safety organization in the city.
Floor is open for questions or motion.
This is more for a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Zhang.
Yep, thank you. And thank you, Chief, for the presentation here. And I believe that, you know, this is a little bit too much from my perspective. It's a lot. And it seems also it is proposing going back and paying like over nearly $15,000 from the FY23 budget, right? And I don't also see all of these bonuses. Like I do not think that this is something that the city can afford at this point of time. So I'll be voting no.
Council, which bonuses are you talking about, Councilor?
So basically finances, you stated very clearly that please note that we built the FY24 fire department budget with a proposed increase included. For FY23, 2023, it will cost $15,000, 310. to cover the proposed increase for the retroactive. So basically that retroactivity, I could understand us moving forward in FY 2024.
Yeah.
But why do we need to go back and pay the 15,310?
So the reason for the retroactivity and we did only go back to January 1 was this conversation started, like I said, with Chief Locke, April of 2022. And it's honestly been kind of promised to the command staff. It's been talked about, and these folks are waiting for it. And it just, with all of the changes in leadership, it just never got moved forward efficiently. If it had been moved forward efficiently, it would have been covered in the 2023 budget. As we are building this for 2024, I did want to make sure that we included it, but I just felt it was fair to have it go back at least until January 1 of 23 to let these folks know that they're covered by this, that we know it's taken a long time and we're going to try to make it right, as right as we can. I wasn't comfortable going back all the way back to the beginning of the fiscal year. Myself and the mayor's office and Catherine talked about that, and we decided that January 1 was a fair compromise, being that it's taken so long to get through it. Because really it was FY 22 when it should have been proposed. Never done anything with it at FY 23, and now we're trying to talk about it in FY 24. So I feel like my folks have been very patient, and I feel like it's an excellent compromise working for both sides to have it be January 1 of 23 retroactive. So that's the thoughts behind it, Councilor.
Yeah, thank you. I think it kind of makes sense, and thank you for going only from January 2023 and moving forward. Yeah. But at the same time, as part of the memo, and also just the comparison between fire and police, from my perspective, should not be on this table, right? I think there are two distinct entities doing two different work, and they sometimes intersect, which is perfect, right? Yeah, I do believe that this is a little bit too much for the city to afford, knowing that the reality of our finances right now. So respectfully, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Just understanding your perspective, Councillor Jang, I see that HR Director Durfee is here, and I think it is important to, I'm going to recognize you in a minute, Director Durfee, to understand, because this is an issue that has come up before at this body, and understanding our policy about retroactive pay, I think is important, because I hear that there's two issues. There's the retroactive, and then there's how police and fire may or may not be kind of related. So I know you can speak on the first, and I don't know if you want to speak on the second, Karen, but I invite you to do so.
Well, I think, I think this was a collective effort for the compression issue. I assume that's the agenda item that we're discussing today. And the retroactivity, there definitely is some things that are left up to the department head. Sounds like the mayor, Catherine, and everyone had a conversation. This has been on the agenda. This has been an issue that has been going on for the entire time I've been with the city, and also before I got here. And I think the thing that I'd like to say about it from the perspective of the fire department and those folks who are heavily invested in this passing is that compression over time is a management issue. It doesn't have anything to do with their performance, and our duty as leadership is to fix that and create a pathway forward. I will say that Mike LaChance has, Chief Engineer LaChance has only been in charge for a very short time, and in that time, he has managed to fully staff the fire department. He has managed to stand up dispatch, and he's managed to achieve a lot of things. And this won't be the only thing that this body sees in terms of just taking care of those low-hanging fruit and some of these very difficult issues, that the fire department needs to address. So, and I did take a look at this. This went back and forth many times. He is within his budget. That's critical. As former Councilor Busher was saying, you know, these budgets are very difficult. It's a difficult budget year. But in terms of public safety, one of the things that we've really worked on with the fire department and we continue to work on is retention. And when there's a compression issue, then there's no one to move forward into these really critical leadership roles. The chief was promoted and then had to promote 2 deputy chiefs, 1 deputy chief, actually, Chief Libby is still here. So these are really critical for getting people to move out of the bargaining unit into these leadership positions. So that's why I support it. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have, Counselor, on, and the chief will help me, of course, on what, you know, specifically the note is about. Because it, you know, it is, the public safety budget is significant. You know, in years past, it certainly hasn't been, you know, this much, but with, you know, police and fire, you just, you know, distinguish they're 2 separate entities. And so if we're looking at fire alone, we need a fully staffed fire department with room to grow. So happy to take specific questions on this if you have them for me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That's okay. How would the board like to proceed? More questions, right, for motion? I think this is something that has been unresolved for too long, and the chief of chances to be commended for bringing it forward and for a resolution. I think I know Jordan worked hard on this as well. Councilor Reedy.
I'm happy to make the motion as recommended to the clerk.
Thank you, Councilor Reedy.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Barlow. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
The motion carries 3-1 with 1 absent. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Thanks for your hard work on this. Okay, next up is I believe 4.4, which is the calendar year 22 street reconstruction program contract amendment for paving work on Flynn Avenue. DPW item. Welcome, Philip. Floor is yours to get us off.
Thank you. So this hopefully final ask for additional funding will close out, hopefully, our CY 22 paving project. So the reason we're here, preparing the initial estimate for Birchcliff Parkway, we assumed we had 3 inches of asphalt. Contractor got out there, started doing work, and we found we had 1.5 inches of just base course. Top course was not installed at the last paving. So we had to scramble a little bit to get change order and get things done for that. Along with the additional asphalt, we found that we needed to adjust some driveway aprons, 11 driveway aprons that were all concrete on the south side of Birchcliff Parkway to ensure proper drainage and that the street operated correctly. And so that tapped into much of our funds that would be needed to do the resurfacing work on Flynn Avenue. So as a consequence of that, we're Board of Finance requesting the $93,000 and some odd dollars to finalize the work. Happy to answer any questions.
When was the last time? When was that?
I think it was 2007. 2000. Yeah, 2000. It's amazing that it held up, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
At 1.5 inches.
Right.
Yeah, so it's going to last for a long time now. It's solid streets.
And you believe it was just somehow an oversight at the time?
Yeah, I think that's basically what it was. I'm assuming most staff that are here now were not around, so I'm assuming that they paved base and they assumed that they were going to come back and pave top. Never did.
Wow, we're catching that. Other questions or we're ready for motion? Councilor McGee.
I just have a quick question. Sure. Noting that the contingency funding is coming from the CY 20 paving contract. Kind of raised a question with me in terms of like, do we have other contingency funding from previous years that's kicking around that?
It's a great question.
And maybe
I don't think so. Or we want.
Hi. The street capital fund, which is funding this, and it is a good point. It was in the first year of our new project accounting system. And so it did kind of get stuck there. And essentially it's in the right location to spend it, and it's allocated towards paving. We just need to switch the project name that's on it to make the auditors happy. And we're working with the administration to how to do that in a more efficient grouping kind of way.
So,
yeah.
as a follow-up, then, so this doesn't impact any of the other paving projects. This is contingency money from a prior fiscal year.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay.
We're ready for what was.
I'm very happy to make the motion, but before I did not hear a response from Councillor Maggie. Like what was responded? Sorry, I did not hear it very well.
You didn't hear his question and what the response to that question was?
No, the question was specific. Do we have all the contingencies, you know, around just waiting to be used somewhere else?
Yes, there are a few projects that still have their contingency. They're not as sizable as this one, as the Queen City Park Road project didn't take nearly as much as what was estimated. Unfortunately, in that bidding, they're much smaller amounts.
Yeah. And you know, how much are those contingency, and how do they reflect on? Are they being? Will they be reflected on your FY24 budget?
They are not currently inside of the FY24 budget specifically, although projects like crack sealing and whatnot are already making use of those funds towards that work type to be able to capture them in contracts this season. So some, not all yet.
Wonderful. I would like to make the motion as indicated on board that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Barlow. Further discussion? We'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 4.5 CityPlace public improvements construction costs. You're taking this one, Laura?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Unless other volunteers. But I'm here to bring forward the public improvements for CityPlace project. Under the ARDA that we've heard a lot about recently, this brings forward the streetscape improvements, Pine, St. Paul, Cherry, and portions of Cherry and Bank. Inside of that document, there are provisions about how CityPlace Partners, who's going to be the owner, for a better word, of the actual contract to do the work. They have procured SD Ireland to do these improvements on the street. The estimate for all of that work is the $11.6 million number that is inside of your request. It is broken out into a 2A and 2D, and that's based on the rules inside of the document of how we want to see the estimate for the different types of work. We had this work, this proposal reviewed by Stantec Consulting to determine whether or not the unit prices inside of the bid were fair and if the quantities that were estimated were reflective of the work. They found that it was accurate. They found that it was very much on trend with the market values, which while still slightly increasing are not escalating too significantly. They recommended that we do accept the findings or the proposal this is an interesting one. We're not really approving the contract. We're kind of accepting the understanding of the proposal in front of us with the intent that once the ARDA by First Amendment triggers, eventually we will start reimbursing CityPlace partners for this work, not in the short term. Questions?
Councilor McGee.
Is this roughly when we expected them to start making the public improvements? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I mean, I was hoping for like 4 years ago, but.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They are, so they also presented us a construction schedule, which we've been having to tell them to hold off until this opportunity comes to the city council. But they are ready to go to start what is the public improvements. They are going to be mostly below ground utilities in the beginning. So it's not going to look like anything significant this season, but they are going to be removing a portion of the existing mall that still remains inside of St. Paul Street's right of way. And then they're going to start building the road subbases up so that they can eventually use them as platforms for staging for when they do their building construction. But they need to get the road up to a usable level this season is their goal.
We're ready for motion, more questions?
I'll move the recommended action on civic center.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow, second by Councilor McGee. Further discussion? Go to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Great, thank you, Laura. This brings us to 4.6. I believe, yes, vehicle purchase recommendation. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So Department of Public Works is here looking for a recommendation and approval from Board of Finance to recommend to City Council that they approve the FY24 vehicle purchase as well as the vehicle replacement list. We do need council approval to sell these vehicles, which we'll be selling at either auction or trading them in, or if neither of those processes work, sell them for scrap at market rate. We did present this list to the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee at their May meeting. We did note that this list is significantly lower than it has been in the past. That is because the general fund does not have any money for FY24, 25, or 26 vehicle purchases. We are currently just covering what existing lease payments we have for FY24, as well as meeting with the fleet committee to determine a strategy for not only meeting these future lease payments in the upcoming years, but as well as trying to find a strategy for funding future lease payments. If there's any other questions on the financial aspect of it, or any more information with Ashley Parker can speak to that as well.
That's McGee.
So these 7 vehicles are
They're all
this, I guess, the FY23-24 deferred equipment list.
Yes.
Those are
so those were
vehicles that need replacing.
correct. So we started with FY23 as a much shorter list than all the vehicles that we are not replacing in FY24 added to that list. So that $3,100,000 raise there is what at current FY24 replacement cost would be. What those deferred costs may be FY25, we're not sure, right? And they did go up around 20%.
I imagine we'll be adding some vehicles that will
Correct. Yes. To give a comparison, last year we replaced 19 vehicles, 12 of which were general fund vehicles. The previous year we replaced 35 vehicles, 33 of which were general fund vehicles. So we're really ramping back and putting a freeze all our purchasing until we can figure out a funding strategy going forward.
We're still waiting for delivery on.
Yeah, well, plow trucks, recycling trucks, those are taking a year plus to build, depending on materials. Fire trucks and ambulances are 2 years out. BD, which is separate from us, are waiting 3 years on a bucket truck. It is a fully electric bucket truck, but still those builds are out. And with the cost of steel, inflation, it's hard for them to hold those quotes for that long. We're in a little strange situation right now that we haven't been in before.
Councilor Jane.
Yep, I just don't understand as to why we need to replace vehicles that are less than 8 years old. Some of them are 2020, 2018, 2017. Why? And I know also that if, in order to transport a vehicle from the US to some countries in Africa, they have to be at least 8 years. So these seem to be like relatively new vehicles. Why do we need to replace them?
Well, initially we had them at longer replacement life cycles. A few years ago, when EV vehicles started coming out, we shortened the life cycle. So if the technology came out a little sooner, we would have more value in the vehicle on a trade-in. If you go 10 years on some of these vehicles, the trade-in values aren't as much as they would be in that 7 to 8 year range.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know what the fleet committee is thinking. Basically, if you make an investment into a vehicle, it at least for, you have to have the return of investment. So basically keeping the vehicle for at least a certain amount of years. But a vehicle being replaced just for 2 years or 3 years after, I don't know what the thought process behind it.
No, we have 5 year, 7 year, 10 year, 12 year replacements. 5 years are more geared toward the emergency vehicles, police, such like that, because those vehicles are used so much. They're on a rotating shift, and they do get a lot of abuse and require a lot of maintenance. And the maintenance on those vehicles starts to get expensive as you get toward its end of life.
Maintenance?
Yeah.
Yeah, maintenance is a big part of this.
Yeah.
So how much is your maintenance?
My maintenance line just in parts has increased 30%. So we had to increase that budget line by $70,000, which we have already felt this year. I've had to do budget amendments to make up for that 30% inflation that we've seen so far. And that's just brakes, oils, regular maintenance issues. Those parts, not big maintenance parts like fire trucks. If a pump goes on that, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yep. My last question is, as part of this list, are there really vehicles that we can keep another 2 or 3 more years?
Some of these vehicles have been, they need replacing. There's a couple of them that we're not sure are going to pass.
I just want to, sorry to cut you off a little bit, there's a long list of deferred equipment that has, I'm wondering, the only vehicles that are being replaced are in the attachment D, right?
Correct.
Which I just want to make sure there's no confusion of that. So attachment D has just.
It should be 4 out of the 7. I believe there's 3 new additions to this list.
It's mostly special revenues, correct?
They're all special revenue except for recycling, which is funded by the solid waste generation tax.
All right, so you're saying there's 3 more that aren't on this box?
Correct. So on this cost sheet, on the cost sheet attachment F, there's a list of the vehicles and the gem car, the Ford Maverick pickup for water, both for water distribution and water resources, Chevy Bolt, which is an admin vehicle, are 3 additions to the fleet.
Okay.
The other 4 are replacements.
So I just wanted, It's a longer list at the beginning that is just, I'm not even sure what that list is. It's a total roster of,
So the deferments list is, the deferment list is what's been deferred over the past 2 fiscal years.
that we haven't gotten.
That we
is
haven't
needed.
replaced, that was
I
to
see.
be replaced.
So I just want to make sure that was clear to you, Councilor Jenks. So the only, the list that is actually being sold here, or related with, is attachment D, which, what's on Civic Clerk, all the vehicles are 2013 to 2013, 2 from 2014 and 1 from 2017. You're saying there's an addition to that that's also posted?
No.
No. All right, so we're only talking about 4 vehicles that we're actually getting rid of. I just want to make sure there's not a confusion with the earlier chart, which is a different chart. This is stuff that we deferred, like you want, Councilor Jang. That longer, earlier list is what we are making do with for another year.
Okay. That's a great clarification, and thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Good. Thank you. Was there something else you were trying to say, Ashley? No. Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Barlow.
I just want to say that I do support this. I know that this year it's a skinnier list than we had even last year. And like, as you mentioned, and I appreciate the work that's been done to try to extend the life of the vehicles on the deferred list. And I also know that the TUC will be having a joint meeting with the fleet committee and sometime in the next month or 2 to try to talk about strategies on how to find funding to address this need. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Thank you. Great. We should remember, I mean, it's great you guys are meeting together. I do think I think we need a comprehensive look at this, of this. So we do have money in the budget for this fleet management, consultant plan that would be kind of a comprehensive strategy for how we get to where we need to, with the fleet that will include looking at funding strategies, but also optimizing replacements strategies, look at the electrification question, look at the significant funding available within electrification and make sure we're maximizing everything in the Inflation Reduction Act. So just want to make sure you're aware of that as in, partnership with committee work. Okay, are we ready? Did you just make a motion on this?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
Great. We have a second by Councilor McGee. Further discussion? We'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Excuse me. All right, we are now at 4.7, which is the 195-201 Flynn Avenue 2019 second memorandum of understanding extension. Welcome, Chapin. This is the issue we worked hard on. My team's up fresh.
Great. We've been working with you all and Chittenden Solid Waste District to solve 2 major issues. One is to develop a expanded drop-off center for the public. Right now, only organics are offered down at 339 Pine Street. And the second is to unite and improve the city's soil management operations. Currently, it happens in 2 different locations, neither of which are well designed or resourced. And we had hoped to work with CSWD to bring to you a draft purchase and sale agreement for 195-201 Flynn by the end of this fiscal year. We were notified last week from the general manager of CSWD that their board had requested more time to do a appraisal of the site. And they proposed to us that we just let the MOU lapse with them. Our position in consultation with the administration is that we've given them $100,000 of option payments, and they've in return promised that we have the right of first refusal. We didn't want to let either of those away, and as imperfect as the MOU is, we wanted to keep those 2 protections in place. And so we're seeking to extend this 3 months, and then we'll work on a purchase and sale agreement that we can bring back to you in that time. We're also seeking, and it's important to mention that the strategy is that we're looking to fund this would be through a master lease coordinated with the clerk treasurer's office. The revenue would get contributed annually for debt service from water resources in their operational budget, and using solid waste generation tax, which pays our recycling program. The recycling program tax and having it used in this way would likely need an ordinance change, according to the city attorney. So we are interested in seeing if the city council would refer this solid waste generation tax issue to the ordinance committee, so that the ordinance committee could start working with us on that, as that will be a key element of funding this in FY24 and beyond. So a whole mouthful there, but hopefully that's helpful. So the actions here are really just to ask for a 3-month extension of the MOU. Solid Waste District understands the city's interest for that extension and is willing to get their board to support it this month as well. And likely bringing to the council meeting upcoming direction to the ordinance committee to help us out on the solid waste generation tax. Conversation.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Councilor McGee.
The motion is recommended to the clerk.
Great. We have a second. Second by Councilor Barlow. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Final DPW item 4.8 traffic markings contract.
There.
Welcome, Jeff.
So I'm Jeff Paget, Moving Director for Park and Traffic, and tonight is the FY24 pavement marking contract. So all of the white lines, the yellow lines, the green bike lanes, stencils, a lot of it's done by contractors, some's done by us. It's a substantial contract, about $150,000. We don't always spend all of it. We got 2 bids this year. They came in right at 151, 154. L&D, who's we've used for years, came in 154. From our perspective, that's the same bid. So we never know how much exactly we're going to spend. They're going to come in about the same price. So we're recommending to go with L&D. One of the things I would like to mention is, again, we shifted this contract. It used to be a seasonal contract, like a calendar year contract. What ended up happening is we bid it in March and then we scramble like crazy to get the paint machines out on the road. This year they shut down clean sweep on Friday and they're up painting on Monday. So we've tightened this up significantly. We also recognize this is a lot of money and we got to find new, more sustainable ways. We can't be painting all of this every year. So Alan Nashtar is our new traffic manager. He's actually actively exploring new technologies that we can do ourselves. So the pavement marking will last 2 or 3 seasons, not just 1. So it's a work in progress. Hopefully next year we'll be able to bid this in a different way. So we'll have somebody doing the long lines and then somebody doing more the stenciling with something more permanent, or, we don't know how it's going to look, but we really want to get out of this big contract and spread the love a little to different technologies.
Jeff, to be clear, since this says FY24, we're doing this now so that we can be ready to spend money on July 1st. Is that correct?
It's in the budget.
Yes.
July 1st, yes.
Because
Because
they're not going to spend money ahead of July 1st.
No, because they're under contract now. They're on the FY23 contract. They're in the DPW parking lot right now with stenciled head now.
Great.
So
This
yes.
is to just ensure that
Yep.
they can seamlessly keep going.
Right, we've already bid it. We just need to do the contract and then keep paying them.
Very good. Questions, motion, Councilor McGee?
Jeff, thanks for the presentation. Are crosswalks not included with these contracts?
Crosswalks are not included in this typically. They don't have the manpower to do that because they're doing all those big long things and they're doing a lot of stenciling. Crosswalks take a lot of effort because you have to paint half of it and you literally have to wait for the paint to dry and then do the other half. So we've traditionally done that with summer help, and there's traditionally been somewhere between 9 and 11, basically college kids that come and watch paint dry for the summer, but they get it all done. Well, the past couple summers we've had, I think we had 3 2 summers ago. We had 4 last summer. I mean, we just had no manpower, so we got very behind on crosswalks. So one of the things that Alan is also looking at is crosswalk technology that we can install so that we're not having to paint them every summer. And he's also come up with a more strategic plan based on the Safe Routes to School program plan. And he's actually starting at the schools and working radially. So we're much more strategic about painting now. I don't mean to be righteous about it. It's just, it's a fact of money and staff. So we have no choice to keep the streets safe. So.
And how are you looking in terms of running the staff? Summer help to do crosswalks this year?
I think we might be at 5 now. I just passed over the past week. I've heard drips and drabs of, oh, somebody's coming in. So I'm not sure who's stuck, but we don't have 9.
Yeah.
We don't have our normal 9 or 10. 9 is 3 crews of 3 kids. Yeah. You get a lot of work done. So yeah, it's almost every day trying to figure out how we have a couple other creative ideas too, but
Look forward to this.
Yeah.
Councilor Jang.
Thank you, budget. Yes, I got it right. Thank you. So I noticed that some sidewalks now are being painted black and white instead of white and red. Why?
So one of the issues we've had over the years is we have these college kids going out to do this and they'll paint a crosswalk right on top of another crosswalk. So you get a white box that's faded, and then you get another white box on top of it that's faded, and then you get another white box on top. And all of a sudden you've got this like mind dizzying, there's like almost like a visual trick on your eye that's like, so they're just painting them, blacking them out.
Okay.
And then they're putting in fresh ones.
Fresh ones.
Yes, there's the level of quality control that we're imposing on painting right now is let's just say new and specific. We've made a lot of changes in the quality control area.
Okay. Wonderful. Yeah, so I pay attention. Just be careful what you do.
You have my email.
Yes. Another question is, it seems one of your staff is already looking into a new technology, basically, so that these can last forever. I mean, longer, right?
Right.
And if we're doing it, why are we then voting for the FY24, painting sidewalk already?
Because we can pivot within this contract. I mean, so it's a little complicated because it's technology, right? So there's different options. So when they build a new road, they actually roll in tape. You'll know if you look around, start looking at crosswalks, newer roads, they have a very thin tape that's down. It looks like it just stuck on top, but it wasn't. It was laid on top and then rolled into the hot pavement. We can't do that because they already exist, right? So we have to do some sort of melted on top approach. And in order to do melted on top, you actually have to grind it down, because if you melt it on top, then your snowplow is going to rip it off. And there's a variety of vendors for this type of product. And we just had to find the one that has the workflow that works for our staff, is at the right scale for us. So Alan started in January, February, and he's all over this. So we're just not ready to dive into it, but we're at the swimming pool lining up to dive.
Wonderful.
To extend the metaphor.
Thank you. I am really happy to make the motion as if we don't have a motion yet.
We do not go.
Okay. Yeah. And also wanted to just comment that I really appreciate the thinking of city staff to try to do this as we move forward in the future by themselves instead of contracting with somebody else. I like that point of thinking. Thank you.
Thanks.
And the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Do we have a second? Second by Councilor McGee. Discussion. We'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Yes, we look forward to hearing these multi-year technologies. Sounds interesting. All right, great. That concludes the deliberative agenda, I guess we'll call it. We now have a presentation on a grant summary in preparation for the FY24 budget is how it's labeled. Hopefully the board remembers, we have created a couple of new positions over the last about a year ago. We're fortunate that Nicole Loesch stepped up to fill one of them and lead this effort. The idea with this was that we needed to staff, we're going to be successful in securing the suddenly very large amount of federal funding that is out there. We needed to staff that. And I thought this would be a good opportunity as we're about to ask you to approve the budget or an update on how that effort is going. And it's some exciting news in a lot of ways. So with that, Catherine, well, I just need to run.
Yes,
I'll let you get started. I've seen it too. I will be right back.
All right. Yeah, I don't think there's much else to say. That was a great intro from the mayor. Nicole and Elizabeth have been out at this for about a year, and early on in our marvelous nights of May, a lot of questions came up about how many grants we had applied for and asking for some more communication from our grants team. Our grants team has a lot of communication tools out there. And we're going to start plugging you into some of those regular updates that our staff gets. But to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind, we thought we'd do kind of a big overview and then start sending you things monthly in case you have questions. So with that, Nicole, take it away.
Thank you. I will try to share my screen here so everybody can see. There was a presentation included in your packet, but I will just quickly run through this for everybody. In theory. All right. Yeah, a couple little things hidden here. Okay, thank you. So as the mayor said, kind of one of our initial high-level focus areas for the grants team is to try to bring in some of the big federal money that's now available for municipalities. And locally, what we're really trying to focus on is reducing the burden on the general fund. So that tends to be the departments that we work with the most are those that are otherwise trying to find money in the general fund. So oftentimes it's infrastructure, public health, facilities are some of the big ones that we've been working with over the past year. And this could be new projects or trying to support some projects that are underfunded or even programs and events. I did want to mention that, you know, the staff in the clerk treasurer's office are just one of many people around the city doing grant procurement. So I've tried to quickly summarize the general areas that our office is focusing on, but there's a lot of overlap where we're always checking in with each other to make sure no one's duplicating work. We're not competing against each other, but collectively we're able to do quite a bit to help our taxpayers relieve some of what would otherwise be a burden on them by leveraging all these other funds. So just a quick recap of what we worked on over the last fiscal year. Just in the clerk treasurer's office, we submitted applications that totaled more than 67 million for federal grants. The majority of those are still transportation related. So bridges, shared use paths, street and sidewalk improvements, traffic signal upgrades, that sort of thing. 1.5 million has been awarded, some in state grants, some in federal. We have a lot still pending, 26 million in pending announcements, many of them which should be announced this month. Included a quick list of the types of things that we're still waiting to hear back on. And a quick summary of the collective work beyond the CT office. Outside of the federally funded projects, we've been able to leverage just over 212,000 in local funds. That brings us more than $2 million worth of work. And that's again, not federally funded work. And then just the federal programs in last year, we acquired more than 107 million in federal awards. So this is a really good opportunity to just do a lot more with a minimal investment using our local dollars. I did also want to flag, congressionally directed spending is still pretty new. Again, it was in place a number of years ago, but it's only been over the last couple of years that it's kind of back as another funding opportunity. So I'd say we're still kind of getting our feet under us to figure out the best system for pursuing some of those. But just this last round, we did request more than 34 million in congressionally directed spending, and about 1 million of that is pending through that appropriations process at the federal level. We won't know for sure about those requests until probably October. Anticipated opportunities that are coming up and that our office will likely focus on. Again, transportation is a big area of need. So we have more bridges that still need funding. Queen City Park Road is kind of the top of our list. Railroad Enterprise Project is wrapping up its design work and will be ready for construction. And that seems to be a really good fit with some of the federal funding programs. Transportation safety is really big at the federal level. So trying to pursue opportunities for construction projects that are specifically focused on safety. Traffic signals are often included in those types of projects, so it's a really good opportunity for some partnerships. And there's a lot of talk about, all the work we're trying to do on Bank Cherry, St. Paul. We are still trying to find federal funding opportunities to offset some of the local burden to get that project done. So every time there's an opportunity for that project, we're clearly pursuing that. And we're also focusing on connections to and within parks. That's been a big theme in a lot of our conversations with that department. For equity, we are currently working on a proposal to develop a neighborhood equity index, which effectively is a very intense data collection effort that will just provide a tremendous amount of information to support pretty much everything the city does. We're really limited in targeted data because our community is so small. So this is a very interesting opportunity, and I'm kind of excited to see this one come together. Workforce development is another area that's pretty new, I think, for a targeted focus area, but all kinds of interests there. Right now, we are working on some proposals for industrial sewing, energy efficiency, trades, and personal care assistance. So we will be submitting an application this week to try to get some funding for those programs. And facilities is another area of big need. So largely focusing on energy efficiencies. And there is some planning work underway to help us kind of get ready for more of those opportunities coming up. Which kind of segues into what we've come across as some of our challenges and opportunities over this last year. On the left are some of the challenges that seem to be recurring themes just across the board and with all departments. We're still struggling to find the local match sources, even though these are great opportunities to leverage our local match, our budgets are very tight. And so it's still a challenge at times to even find the local match. Staff capacity is sometimes a constraint even to get an application submitted. Our team doesn't have the technical knowledge that the project managers and the program managers have, and so sometimes they just don't have the time. And we know we have a lot of needs in the general fund, but unfortunately there just sometimes aren't specific opportunities that align with those needs, and fleet is a good example. There are very few opportunities that are relevant for us to help in that area. And then Railroad Enterprise is a good example of a project where sort of like work is still underway. We aren't quite ready to apply, but I anticipate in the life of most of the federal programs are going to be 5-year programs. And so in this 5-year time, the work should wrap up and we'll be ready to submit those applications. In terms of some opportunities to try to mitigate some of the challenges we've run into for fleet, we do think there's probably some opportunities at the state level just for a little more advocacy and conversations around changing some of their definitions and kind of the narrow framework that they use to replace or fund fleet replacement. For facilities, we just don't really have enough data to competitively compete for some of the applications. And so we're in the midst of a big project to really collect data and quantify what we could improve, which should help our applications going forward. Infrastructure, we've already talked on, we just need to complete some of the active planning work that's happening. The workforce, we are, I think, fully staffed now for our workforce team, which is great. And then just more collaboration, you know, this has definitely been interesting in trying to find ways to connect projects that may, on the face of it, you wouldn't think, you know, like an equity index would be a transportation project, but at the federal level, they're making these connections. And so we're really trying to take that time to bring in departments that may not otherwise about working together. So next steps, kind of what's on our plate, but we're very curious to hear at your level as well, what you think we should look at for the next year. We do need to prepare a little bit more for our congressionally directed spending requests. They tend to have a very fast turnaround, so we just want to be, you know, as well positioned as we can be when those come up next year. More communication between all of our departments so we can holistically present these kind of grant updates. We just don't have a good system yet since this is all pretty new for all of us. So we'll continue to work on that. We are trying to work on a public facing kind of grant award database so that this is just easier for everyone to see how we're leveraging all of this grant funding and trying to save our taxpayers money but still get a lot done. We're going to try to improve and streamline our announcements of funding opportunities. This is always, you know, it's hard to track all of the opportunities while we're also writing the grants at times. So we're still trying to find a good solution to streamlining some of this. And then continuing to work on our non-cash match strategies so that we can still compete for some of these grant applications that do require a local match. We are strapped for cash. So that is my overview of what we've been doing for the last year. Happy to take any questions or jump back into anything else.
Great, thank you, Nicole. Council meeting. Thank you, thanks, Nicole, for all the work you're doing. So much additional funding. My question is about the local match challenges that we're having, and you know, if we are awarded grants that have a local match, if we already have a local match, how long does that funding, is it available for us to?
It's a good question. And our strategy for that has actually been that if we can't sort of secure our local match before we apply, we are not applying because we don't want to be stuck in a situation where we're having to make that decision or potentially, you know, decline an award if we can't pull together the local match. Yeah.
Thank you for this work. I think this is super important in terms of offsetting taxpayer obligation to pay for a lot of things. So as much as we can do of this, obviously, I'm super supportive. One of the questions I had a question about local match as well. And it's like, do we have money in our budget that's like tagged specifically for local match as they opportunistically?
As a matter of fact, we do. It's in the capital budget. Ashley, how much money is in there? Or Nicole probably knows because she's like, I need every penny.
Oh, we had $4 million in the March 22 voter approved bonds. And so we've been using that to go towards our matches. We have been trying to be very frugal with that because there are so many opportunities. And so we're working with teams to possibly even find within their own existing budgets, places where we can maybe have also like additional local match options. So we can make sure that we're really utilizing as many dollars as we can and stretching that available 4 million as far as we can.
Thanks. I also wanted to know, it seems like there's been a lot of work this past year with the school district trying to procure money to pay for different activities at the high school. And it seems like there's a lot of need to work closely with the legislative delegation at the state level as well to sort of make sure that they're on the same page as the city or as much as we can have them there. And like you said, like to tweak you know, any of the statutes to try to make sure we fit into more buckets when these grants are available. So can you talk a little bit more about the work or your idea about how you work with the local delegation?
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, I think at least at the level of our grants team, we don't do much direct work with our state delegates. We do, since we always have a staff point of contact, or, department head contact for the grants that we're writing, we often talk with the departments about the importance of those connections. And so we really, I think, rely on department heads to have those good relationships or to be able to advocate politically for some of those changes that we need. The school district, as an example, we try to just share as much information as we can in terms of, if an opportunity pops up that we think could be a good fit for the school department, passing that along, making sure that, because they are very busy, we don't want them to miss opportunities either. And oftentimes after we submitted some of our grant applications, like at the federal level, it is important at that stage to have our delegates aware of our applications. They do have the potential to influence the trajectory of some of those applications. So at the federal level, when we're applying there, I'd say that's been more my experience and more my focus area than even at the state level. But Jake, you have more to add?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just say that Nicole is very modest, and one of the things I think we've done really well is take a team approach to this. And didn't list up here, but was a success collectively, was $12 million that Leahy allocated for Cherry Street grade streets. So while this was a real partnership with DPW, I think, having the coordination and having multiple people have relationships with the congressional delegation is a good thing. So it's not just the grant team. And I think we're coordinated well, and hopefully we'll get some of the larger grants that are still pending so that we can really minimize that impact. So I just want to say, granted, Nicole used to work for DPW, she knows our industry well and is really kind of looking out for the whole city, but I feel like on the transportation side, we're very well represented. So.
My last question was just, what kind of facility data are you missing in your survey?
And I actually might be able to speak to a little in more detail too. So it is our facilities team that's taking the lead on it, and they're really doing an in-depth inventory of kind of the existing conditions of each facility, what the options are to improve the systems and the equipment that's in there now, and how much energy savings could be gained with those different options. That's a decent summary.
Yeah, I think it's really specific to some of the opportunities that are popping up. Like, it gets us a foot in the door. And in addition to that, so we're talking about these energy efficiency opportunities, there's a new group that we're working with, well, the facilities team is working with, to also help us create a roadmap for all of the different ways we could improve our buildings' energy usage, but we're also looking to maintain them. So we're kind of taking it, taking two approaches to get to the same place. But yeah, it's going to give us better information to apply for these grants and hopefully be successful.
Builds on, didn't the city do a facilities inventory several years ago? The school
2018,
right afterwards, and it builds on that work.
It does, because 2018 was, goodness, a bit, a while ago now, so it's a little bit outdated. Most of the costs have, well, in all honesty, a lot of the costs have like tripled at this point, and some of the needs have changed because as the years have gone on, we still have issues that need correcting, and so the work just keeps adding on. So at this point, it's a good time to take a look at where our buildings are now, how it's changed since those old reports, and then also add that that little bit of energy efficiency to it, so we can also make sure that we're taking advantage of making our buildings sustainable.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is such a great, wonderful work. And I'm really appreciative. And Nicole, I always perceive you as an engineer, and now you're talking about grants. This is good. That's how the good staff do. They can go anywhere and do the work. Perfect. I'm glad. And I just wonder also if you need more capacity as well, because this is a new, or are there a request for that? Yes.
Yeah, great question. It's definitely something that has come up. I'll say in our office, there's one area that we acknowledge. We are not staffed to probably take advantage of as many opportunities as might be out there, and that is the world of philanthropy and the non-federal or state grants. We really, we don't have the capacity to delve into that world. So, you know, that is one potential area where additional staff capacity could bring in some additional dollars. The other thing that we've heard from other departments, so this is less of an impact for probably the CT office and staff, but you know, administering federal grants takes quite a bit of time. And so, although I talked about staff capacity constraints initially in terms of the application development process, it's also a big factor for departments to consider, even if they want to apply, because they don't know if they have the time to manage the grants. And so sometimes there have been requests of, and just questions of, you know, how is the city thinking about any potential capacity expansion to take the burden off of the project managers and the financial staff to, you know, do the administrative side of the grants.
Amazing. And, you know, I completely agree, because I remember 2-3 years ago when we were having this discussion, people were not psyched about it, to say that, oh, municipalities run on taxpayers' money, right? And also some of these grants have so much, you know, hurdle attached to it. So basically you put so much work to get a grant, and then the reporting is just a nightmare. People choose to just leave it alone and continue with the taxes. But I'm glad that, you know, this year the city is changing, or last year, the city started to change its mindset to bring these dollars. Now, what is your relationship, or your department, it's not on department yet, but with the enterprise fund departments? Do you support their work, or they do it separately, or what is the dynamic there?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I'd say the biggest connection and support is really just like initial communication. I see Megan on here, so I'll use her as an example with the water resources team. There are some funding opportunities that are specific to, you know, water and stormwater. Oftentimes we will just share those opportunities with their department. Usually they take the lead on water specific grant requests. But we also kind of leave it open that if they're interested and are just short-staffed at that moment, then we can help still support the grant application. We have sort of a little like one pager that asks a few questions. Sometimes we'll use this as a tool to help us figure out when we should step in to help, or when capacity is so constrained, we really, like, it's not going to do any of us any good to try to force that in. So yeah, conversations are still happening. Traffic is another example where we often talk about the grant opportunities that are out there. Traffic isn't as staffed for grant writing. So that's an example of one where we do step in more to help with the actual grant writing.
Amazing. This is good. Thank you so much. This is amazing. And CFO Chad, this is more a question for you now. You know, the city operating budget, you know, most of it is from the general fund, but we also do have a lot of other money coming into the city, such as the pilot fund, some federal grants, and was just wondering what the percentage of that in the city's operation. And no rush right now. I think in the future, I would want to understand how the city is operating also without the taxpayers, without the funds from the taxpayers. But this is good. Congrats, Mr. Mayor, for making it happen. Good.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. And I share your enthusiasm and that other councilors have noted tonight that this is a really positive additional capacity that we've created, and so I appreciate this chance to kind of take stock of it and talk about where it's headed here. So I think in the interest of time, if there, I do want to make sure, I guess apparently I just learned we're getting kicked out of this room at 7. So we have about a half hour left, and we have an important discussion about the budget to go. So if there's no further questions for Nicole, I think we will let her go and say thank you. And we're looking forward to the news on some of these awards. And with that, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move now to the, really what is our final opportunity for a budget discussion before this milestone of the administration submitting the budget to you and kind of finishing our work and handing it off to you. The budget, Catherine posted the full budget on Friday, and you know, there's she has there's been some minor changes since our past discussions, so I'll go through in a moment. She has a few things to present. Just overarchingly, we've been talking for months about this budget. It's certainly been, I think in many ways this is perhaps the most challenging of the 12 budgets I've been responsible for. I do think we're coming to the end of the process here with continued investment in public safety and a transformed public safety in many ways. Another major theme of this budget, we are continuing largely through Burlington Electric Department, but our commitment to move towards the net zero future vision that the city has. And it is certainly a budget where we have worked hard to be both maintain services I think Burlingtonians value and to at the same time recognize that these are volatile and challenging times for many of our constituents, and that we need to be very careful about new costs that we're imposing on them. And I do think this budget, which keeps, given the inflationary times that we've experienced in the last couple of years, that's another theme of this budget. So with that, I'll hand it over to Catherine to speak about a few details, and then open it up for any questions or discussions that you guys are ready for.
I do have a very brief PowerPoint that was not put up before this to just guide us through. I'm hoping that you all spent the very lovely weekend just looking at all of the detailed budgets. But if you didn't, there's still time, and I will guide you through. I will not be able to, here we go. This is really just a reminder for those of you who've been at every meeting. You're just probably sick of me saying it, but for those of you who are new, this is a very challenging year. We have increased public safety costs, we have the fleet costs, and we have a lot of general inflation and COLA increases for non-public safety staff. And we have been talking about this for several months. We did have our 5 marvelous nights of May. And we will talk about some of the feedback that was incorporated. I have also sent out lots of detailed information as requested out to various city councilors. This is where we have landed. It is, as you can see, about a 3 to 4% increase over last year's budget. And it is just over $101 million. This is the general fund. This is the proposed municipal tax rate. Our proposal is that it go from 70.82 cents to 75.23 cents. It is just over a 6% increase. These last 2 budgets, bullets, are the same as what you saw on May 30th. We are still including the additional ½ cent for street capital and raising the exemption for the business personal property tax from 45 to 75,000. One of the questions I got on May 30th that I wanted to be sure was clear to everyone is the impact. And I appreciated Sharon's comment about needing to make sure we have a way to ensure an affordability overlay. And And as you can see here, after the reappraisal, you will remember that the median price of a home in Burlington is at $370,000. I didn't pull that number out of a hat. That's what that record stands for. That's why that's there. And you can see the effect of some of these proposed tax increases. The 2 cents for the increased parks appropriation is just over $6 a month. The additional money, the additional half cent for street tax is just over $1.50. And the total municipal tax increase, including those 2 items, is $13.60 a month. What's driving the rest of that increase is items that over which we don't have control. The GMT tax went up slightly this year. There have not been that many changes to the budget since June 1st. There's a whole slide of things on May 30th that I made changes to. I'm not going to revisit that, but you can go to my old slide. These are things that have been changed since. We increased legislative representation by 25,000. There were a couple of things in the regional programs line, and those were corrected. What had previously been called the CAHOOTS model, which we're now calling CARES, that budget increased a little bit. It is also, that's a cost share with the state, but our piece of it is $365,000. And because this is such a tricky budget, I went and I always like to look at what has happened in the past, and especially before I got here. And the contingency line item used to be $500,000, and we've trimmed it as we go. People may remember that to spend even 1 cent of contingency, we need to come get city council approval. So I want to be very clear, this is not like a Moreau and Catherine fund to use for whatever we want. It's very tightly controlled, but because there's a lot of unknowns in this budget, we did bump that up just a little bit in case it is needed. I did also want to clarify a little bit here. There's one slight change. I came back to you on May 30th and I said, it's not a $5 million hole. Actually, it's $5,900,000, and that was very unfortunate. I'm going to explain a little bit more about how we got there, but I did, the most important thing is the last bullet. That 900, we've gotten down to about 700,000, and there's no more surprises. Like, I'm not coming back for any more money. We were able to reduce some of those expenses. Also, I was not very clear in the last meeting about what had caused that. And so the 2 middle bullets, I'm really trying to be very upfront with everyone about what happened. In previous budgets, we had this placeholder for 500,000. We called it carry forward savings initiatives. It was a Bob Rustin special, and it sounds great, but we didn't have documentation about it. It had just been carried forward for several years. We hadn't trued up if we had the 500,000. And so that essentially caused a $500,000 hole in our health insurance budget. We also had unforeseen retirement expenses on the employer side. And that is because in the BFFA contract, employees can only contribute 14% of their income to retirement. The true cost is up to 15.5%. We can't slough that off onto all the other employees. That would be unfair. And so that is a cost that is being borne by the city. As I mentioned, we were able to tighten some things up. So that's not a $900,000 about 700,000. And you'll see that in the budget. One of the things that some counselors asked for was just a breakdown of, I think they're more interested in expenses, but I've done it on revenues, and now I'll do another slice for Counselor Jang. Understanding kind of what he wants, but this is kind of an overview of where our revenues have come from. You can see non-departmental, huge. That includes property taxes, franchise fees, local option tax, gross receipts, and so I can break all of that out for the future. But you can also see where some of our the larger revenue earning departments are here. And I put a large other here, and that's because these are all like 200,000 or less, making that 3 million. It wasn't very meaningful data. And then on this next slide, you can see the expenses. City Council coming in at a strong 0%. You guys don't cost very much. But everyone else, you know, you can see non-departmental again covers a large variety of things, and we can talk more about that. But fire and police, they make up 34% of the budget on public safety. And then if you look at DPW and parks, that's another 19%. We are getting to the end of this process. The charter states that by Thursday, this will no longer be my budget. It will be the mayor's budget. And in addition to the detailed budgets you see on the website, we will get the formal resolution finished and posted, as well as what we call the mayor's transmittal. Sounds very formal, but it is the mayor's memo that always accompanies the budget, talks about kind of the principles, any large changes or things that are noteworthy in the budget. Then we will meet next Tuesday as a city council, and we do have a second city council meeting on Monday, the 26th. Need to pass a budget by then, because we got to do it by the 30th, and I don't think we want a third meeting. Hoping it doesn't take that long. This is a redo slide from the 30th, and I won't read it all again here, but I thought it was important enough to put in again, because we know that there is a heavy reliance on cuts and one-time funds in this budget. We have a lot of work to do, like starting July 1st, or maybe starting June 27th, if we pass it on June 26th. And it is detailed here, and some of that work is in fact already starting. But I think it's important for us to all be on the same page, because sometimes we put the budget away and forget about it for a few months, and this will be 365-day year budget. And we will revisit it and talk about it probably in every meeting. That's all I've got.
Great, thank you, Catherine. So, with our remaining time tonight, it's really another chance if there's any discussion that folks would like to have. Anything you'd like us to be thinking about as we finalize the budget, or any questions you have? Councilor Barlow.
Could you put this presentation on?
Yes.
So please, because I want to digest it, a lot of information, just.
Absolutely.
And then the other question I had was, on a $370,000 median priced home, the municipal portion of this year's tax increase, if this budget is approved, is $163.
Yes.
But do we know what the school portion would be? We know that, I was just looking as you were finishing your presentation, and I can't seem to find it. And I know some of that gets finalized late in the year after town meeting day budgets are approved, but it'd be good to sort of know, because the public looks at their tax bill and they don't make the distinction of which part is municipal and which part is school. And I know, we know that school's about 70%, right, or thereabouts. So it's a much bigger portion of the property tax bill. Nevertheless, it helps to understand that in the context, that greater context of this $163 increase that we'd be asking, like.
Yes. The latest information that I have from Nathan at the school shows an impact on a $370,000 home that qualifies for homestead is $207.
Okay. Thanks. So
Right. Great, if there's no further questions, yes, the only, we did have a quick discussion last week. We said we'd talk about it again now for people's planning purposes. Again, you know, it doesn't really have to be decided tonight, but there's this question out there whether we're going to try to, the council's going to try to review this and take action at the council meeting next 20th, whether you're going to want to act on the 26th, which would be the final, which is another potential night for the council meeting, which has not been totally scheduled yet. Any thoughts on that at this point, Councilman Gay, or?
I'm not sure. I think I wouldn't want to speak for others. I spent a lot of time with the budget, certainly, but who others are in terms of how quickly we're going to go from here. So
that makes sense. Okay, so we'll
to email to figure out.
Okay. Great. We will, sorry, what was, I talked to you for a second there. What was?
No, I was just saying probably good to email around and see where folks are at.
Very good. If there's no further questions or comments.
Yes, I would like to make a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Jang.
Yeah, I think it will be good to please consider getting back to me on my email of May 10th that I sent to you and Chad and members of this as well. I think I would really appreciate that. And initially, my perspective is $370 a year from a median home taxpayer is already too much, not to consider water rates going up, electricity going up, inflation for the people. I think the city needs to do more investigating into reducing this budget this year, at least from the perspective of a taxpayer. That's where I am, but I really would love you to please consider getting back to my initial email when we started to discuss this budget season this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Councilor McGee.
I think I'll just quickly add on to that. It might be helpful with public communications around the budget if we're able to give people a full picture of those increases across the board, because I know the recycling tax is going up as well. So between recycling, water, and electricity, just making sure that everyone has complete information, because I know all of those things are within this budget, but aren't necessarily talked about when we talk about the impact on families.
Great. I think with that, So Catherine Mayer is a good point. The way we kind of handled it in the past is we're not looking for any kind of action from the board tonight because we haven't presented the final budget, but we generally do convene a board finance meeting. It's helpful for the full council to have a recommendation of the board for action. So I don't know if I guess that somewhat goes to the question of what the council is likely to. So I guess we'll leave it a little bit of an open question for now, but we will be convening a board finance meeting before the budget, the night of the budget, seeking a recommendation. And I guess maybe at the minimum, we'll do board finance meeting on the 20th, so that we can try to see if we're attempt to get a recommendation from the board that night, even if so why don't people plan on that? We will have a board of finance meeting. Probably focused primarily on the budget. Maybe no other items, and where the goal will be to see if the board will make a recommendation. So that would be our hope that we can get there. So with that, stay tuned. Look forward to finishing up this process with you over the next week or two. And we will at 6:52, if there's no objection, adjourn the Board of Finance. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.